What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is a spoiler review of Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi. This video is going to be a little bit different than what I've done in the past. You know, there's no words on the up here keeping me on track. This is just kind of an impromptu, just off the top of the cuff kind of deal. So this is a spoiler review, obviously, so, you know, if you are worried about spoilers in any way, then obviously come back after you watch the movie. This video I'm going to go into pretty much everything. What I liked about Star Wars Episode 8, what I didn't like about it. I just saw it for the second time. So there are some things that I'd like to discuss about, I like some things more, I like some things less. So obviously spoiler warning, if you don't want spoilers, this isn't the video for you. So I'm going to go sort of off the cuff here. I got some things marked down on my phone that I want to go through. So this video might be a little longer than usual, but I'm going to test out, see how you guys like this more impromptu thing for these spoiler reviews. Like I said, I don't have anything keeping me on track here. I'm just going to kind of, talk. So it might be a little more informal than what you're used to seeing me talk on camera. So I saw it again today. I liked it a lot. It's definitely in my top 5 Star Wars movies. It's one of my favorites. It's not the favorite. I think The Force Awakens is better. I said in the original review that I liked the second half of The Last Jedi much more than the first half, and that's definitely true. I think that really only, heightened that with my second viewing. So I like the second half a ton. Like, it's some of the best Star Wars content that I've seen in any Star Wars movie. But the first half, I was more underwhelmed the second time I watched the first half than I was in my original viewing. And it could have been maybe because I was there on premiere night. I was in my Kylo Ren costume like I showed you guys, and I was maybe more in the moment than I was this time around. And this time around, I could sort of settle my emotions a little bit more. But I don't really think that's it, because generally, I get back, I have time to, let everything sort of marinate and think about what I'm going to say in my review. I think honestly, the second time around, you can notice things that you don't see the first time around. And that's kind of what happened. There's things in the first half of the movie. The first half of The Last Jedi doesn't necessarily feel like a full Star Wars movie. Like the Force Awakens from start to finish is a Star Wars movie. The Last Jedi, the first half of it feels, I guess it kind of feels like a Star Wars movie. It feels kind of like a prequel movie, kind of. With less politics, obviously, but some politics. And I feel like it just, like when they go to Canto Bight and other places with animal races and that kind of stuff, it feels more prequel than it does original trilogy. And The Force Awakens didn't really have much of that. It's had like Maz Kanata's castle with the, cantina kind of deal, but that's original trilogy stuff. Last Jedi, I feel like the first half didn't really, it hooked me less. Like, I felt more cold by the first half than I felt my original viewing. But on the flip side, with the second half, I felt even more engaged and more wowed by it. I felt that extra wow factor with the second half. Pretty much, I don't always clarify this stuff in my original reviews, and this is kind of interesting because in these spoiler reviews, the shackles are off. I can kind of spoil some things. In the spoiler-free review, especially with Star Wars stuff, you really, really have to be careful. Like, I really make sure I watch what I say, because I could spoil any number of things in that review by talking about different elements of the film. And like, you really, really got to be careful about what you say, especially in a Star Wars review. And I've been doing this for a year and a half now, and I learned pretty quickly that in any movie, especially big ones, but any movie, you really, really got to narrow down your word choices to make sure you really don't spoil even the smallest thing. And I learned that the hard way with some of my early reviews, and you guys told me that, so I'm grateful for that. But I definitely make sure I never do anything like that in a spoiler-free review. But this time around, I can go over those things. But the second half, everything after Canto Bight, which is the planet that Rose and Finn are on when they're looking for the code breaker, everything after that is great. I think I loved almost everything after that. I think at that point, it becomes a Star Wars movie. It really gets into the nitty-gritty of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. You have things like lightsaber battles, the throne room. I'll get into that. Just the conflict between the First Order and the Resistance is more, it feels heightened and it feels just better. In the first half, I don't know, they're chasing them a little bit and they're shooting at them to let them know they're still there. They're a little bit behind. It's just kind of like a turtles race. You know what I mean? Like, they're waiting for them to run out of fuel. It's not, like the beginning opening scene where Poe is messing with Hux. That's interesting. And then there's kind of a shootout. He takes down some of their ships. That's fun. But it really gets better when they get to the planet where they're taking the rebel base, that kind of thing, the new rebel base, and they're kind of hiding out. It gets there and Luke shows up. That's great. But everything after Canto Bight is easily the weakest part of this movie. Not even close. It's the weakest part. And I've pretty much everyone has said that. Everyone has said that from what I've seen about critics online, other YouTubers or Rotten Tomatoes or fans, Reddit, anything. Canto Bight seems to be like almost unanimously hated. And I understand why. It just feels very forced in there. And they go into some things like, some people have tried to dissect, sort of animal cruelty, politics, those kind of things. I don't really look at that kind of stuff, especially not in a Star Wars movie, unless it's like overtly obvious and overtly there. That's not something I really dig deep into because I don't go to a Star Wars movie to get a political lecture or a social topic lecture. So that's why I don't really look into those things. Why I don't really tell you guys about those things unless it's like glaringly obvious and affects how you view the film, which I don't think it does. But Canto Bight, it's not a very good section of the film. It's very dry. It is fast paced, but it doesn't feel like it really adds much to the film other than expanding the universe, which I'll get to in a little bit. But it doesn't add much because ultimately the plan gets foiled when they actually get to disable the lightspeed tracker. So it doesn't even work. So it feels like kind of a waste of time. What I was thinking about, what it reminded me of, in a sort of lesser extent, hopefully I'm about to spoil How I Met Your Mother for you guys. So if you haven't watched How I Met Your Mother, skip ahead like 30 seconds. The last season, the 9th season of How I Met Your Mother, really, the whole season mostly, or the vast majority of the season, is spent at Barney and Robin's wedding, right? And you spend that whole season there. The season's not very good to begin with, but you spend so much time at this wedding, right? Then in the last episode, they tell you, oh, we got divorced. Okay, so you basically just wasted the entire season. You wasted 20 episodes of my life. You know what I mean? Like, you wasted all that time because we went through this whole wedding, all the ups and downs, and it finally went through, and then you guys get divorced, like, not long after. So that's what it kind of felt with Canto Bight. Like, you go through this whole thing, this whole ordeal with them getting in prison and Benicio del Toro's character showing up and BB-8 busting them out. And then they get there and they don't even accomplish what they were seeking to accomplish. So it's not actually something that really plays a big part into the rest of the story. It's really only there to expand the universe and to establish Rose and Finn's relationship. There's really not much other purpose for it, other than maybe to fill time in the movie. But the movie's 2.5 hours long as is, so I'm sure Disney was trying to cut it down to begin with. I think you could definitely cut down large sections of that whole Canto Bight, that whole Canto Bight section. The movie would be way better off, honestly. You would keep the runtime down and you would reduce elements that no one really cared about to begin with. The Finn and Rose thing, that romance to me is, I don't know. I don't love that. I don't feel like I really felt much from it. Like when she kissed him at the end, like I was like, okay. First and second viewing, I never really felt much from that. I didn't feel like there was really much of a connection there. Rose's character, I feel like the actress, I forget her name, it's slipping me right now. She did a really great job. I didn't feel like she did a bad job, but Rose's character is very forced into this movie. Like you can tell, I think probably early on in the script writing process, this is just a guess, but to me, it kind of seems like Disney and Rian Johnson were like, okay, we need to add a new character to this story, and we need to make her fit into all this somehow. And I think that's noticeable to me. It is guesswork based on the creative process, but I felt like Rose, is very forced into this story. Like the way her and Finn meet, the way that she just goes with Finn on this mission. I mean, she's like a maintenance worker, you know what I mean? She happens to stun him, and then she goes to Poe and with Finn, and they're like, okay, we're going to Canto Bight, like, and then they love each other. I don't know exactly how those things all go together, but that's not something that really, really hooked me very much. And I felt like I don't want to see a love triangle. I don't know if Finn and Rey are beyond friends or what the relationship is. I'm assuming it's just friendship, which I'll get to, but I hopefully they don't do like a love triangle or anything where like Finn likes Rey, but Rose likes Finn and Rey likes someone else. I don't know. But I'm hoping they really don't get into all that. But yeah, the Canto Bight is by far the worst part of the movie. But the entire first half, really, like, the opening sequences of Star Wars are always action-packed. It's a Disney formula. Like if you ever watch an Avengers movie or a Marvel superhero movie, they always have a real exciting scene at the beginning, an action-packed scene to get you hyped and get you invested in the movie. And that's what they do. And in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, they did the exact same thing. They're on Jakku, and Lord Santega gets killed by Kylo Ren. I felt that was a way, way more effective scene than what we got in The Last Jedi, because it establishes Kylo Ren as a villain. It shows how dangerous he is, what he can do, and that's exactly what you're looking for out of the villain. Usually what this kind of movie does in the opening scene is to establish the villain and sort of go from there. But you establish the First Order in this first scene, but it's exciting, and it's a space battle, but not much really important all that happens. Like I guess it establishes the chase and the direction the story's headed, but there's really not that much that I really hooked me in that first scene. That's what a lot of these movies are intended to do. They're intended to hook you in that first scene. It didn't grab me. And then later on in the movie, I mean, it's still in the first half, like I said, everything up till Canto Bight, really, it's okay. It's not bad, but it doesn't really feel like Star Wars. And I'm assuming that was intentional. I'm assuming it was intentional to kind of go a different direction and be unique and be different. And I said that in the review. Like sometimes their choices to be different just sort of gets in the way of the story itself. Like Rian Johnson wanted to be unpredictable, and that worked great sometimes, and sometimes it really gets in the way of the story. It gets in the way of what makes sense for the characters and which direction the story is headed. So, and I feel like if they just kind of taken what they had done in the second half and implement that in the first half, this is one of the best Star Wars movies ever. Maybe the best if they do that, because the second half is amazing and the first half is it's kind of predictable in some ways. Like I said, it's unpredictable in some ways, but it's predictable in poor ways. It doesn't really feel like Star Wars. And well, I guess, like I said, it feels more like the prequels than OG Star Wars, the trilogy. And it doesn't have any emotion to it. There's that death, of Rose's sister, but no one knows who she is at that point. And then when Rose kind of goes over that, you're like, oh, that must have been her sister, right? So that's not something that's ever really explored. And there's not much emotion there. Second half, you get a ton of it. And so The Force Awakens is my favorite Star Wars movie. I'll post my list at the end of this video or post in the comment section, whatever you guys want. The Force Awakens is my favorite, though. It's number one for me. There are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is they set up like kind of the myth, the legend of Luke Skywalker. And, the whole movie is Rey, or, the Resistance getting to Luke, right? And then when you get to Luke in this movie, it's like sort of anticlimactic. Like he tossed the lightsaber over his shoulder, like that's fine. He did that, I think in Return of the Jedi, where he tossed the saber over his shoulder. That's, but it feels like I wanted more out of this conversation. Like I wanted it to feel bigger, and like I just spent a whole movie trying to get to Luke, and then getting to Luke doesn't feel as big as I wanted it to. And that was weird to me. I feel like they didn't capitalize on the moments they should have. And more generally, in general, just about this movie, some things that bug me. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are not consistent with each other. And that's kind of a problem to me, because The Force Awakens is my favorite. And you know how J.J. Abrams does things and how he did it in The Force Awakens. He sets up so many questions that he does not answer. Right? He doesn't answer. And there's the promise that they're going to be answered in the next two movies. And the problem is, people get so hyped making these theories and getting so invested in these characters and these unanswered questions. Who are the Knights of Ren? Who is Snoke? Who are Rey's parents? What is Luke doing? All these questions, right, that aren't answered in the movie, and they're going to be answered in the next two. So then we come into this one and expect, those questions to be answered, and a lot of them, they either just aren't, or they aren't rewarding answers. So, and that's purposeful to an extent. So I'll get into that. So basically it's purposeful to an extent in the sense that they want to extend Star Wars outside of just the Skywalkers, and outside of just Luke and his relatives and his family. Sorry, I was looking at the screen to make sure I was still recording. We're good. They want to extend Star Wars outside of just the Skywalker lineage. And that's kind of why, or outside of the characters that you know already, at least. And that's why Rey's not a Palpatine. She's not a Kenobi. She's not a Skywalker. And they did that purposefully because they want Rey's parents to be nobody, to show that anyone can be force sensitive, anyone can become a really powerful and an important player in the Star Wars story. And I get why they're kind of doing that. They're trying to, like I said, broaden the horizons of Star Wars, not just make it so specific to the Skywalkers and the Skywalkers' friendships and all those kind of things, or their relationships. And I get why they did that, but I think the answer that we get for Rey's parents is not fulfilling in any way. They're nobodies. They dropped her off. They sold her. They left her. And to me, I understand that kind of makes sense. Rey comes up from rags, not to say riches, but rags to riches kind of story. Hero that comes from nothing. I get that, but a lot of people are expecting Star Wars, and this isn't really consistent with Star Wars. And they want to go in a different direction. It's not going to appease everybody because people like, following the tropes of Star Wars, the consistency of Star Wars. That's not what this movie does in almost a lot of different ways. But that's one of them. And Snoke, well, first off, we don't see the Knights of Ren at all. They were a big part of the first movie, at least kind of hinted at that they would be a big part of this movie. They're not in it. I'm hoping they'll be in episode 9. So Snoke is, Snoke was Darth Plagueis. Snoke was Mace Windu. Snoke was everyone else under the sun that we had seen before. Snoke was Darth Vader, or Palpatine come back, Darth Sidious. And he's none of those things. He's just a guy. He's just Snoke, right? And that's fine, but we need to understand why he is in the position he's in, how he's so powerful, why he's so old, why he's scarred up, and none of that is ever discussed. I'm assuming that's going to be gone into in comics or some other, canon material, but that's just something that should be discussed in this movie. And if you're not willing to go into huge detail or great detail in this movie, then don't kill him and take him into the next movie. I'm assuming they did that because they want Kylo Ren to take the lead. They want Kylo to be in command and sort of, control things so he can actually finish out his character arc. But, and part of the reason is they wanted to be unpredictable, and they did it because everyone's expecting this to happen with Snoke. Exactly what happened with the Emperor. In the first movie, A New Hope, you see like holograms of the Emperor, but you never see him in person. Second movie, Empire Strikes Back, you see him in person, he becomes more directly involved. Same with Snoke. You see him in person, he becomes more directly involved. Third movie, you see him in person more. He dies because he gets killed by the villain, by Darth Vader, his apprentice. And that's what everyone expected to happen with Snoke. He's going to make it to the third movie, get killed by Kylo Ren. We know more about him. And that just doesn't happen. They went unpredictable. It's a shocking moment. When he gets cut in half, no one expected that, really. No one could. I don't know anyone who could have said that coming into the movie, Snoke's going to die in this movie, Kylo Ren's going to kill him. I didn't see anyone that said that. No one thought that was going to happen. And, kudos to them being unpredictable. But Snoke is such a really cool character. I thought he was really cool, and I wanted to see more of him. And I wanted to see him maybe fight with a lightsaber, maybe fight Luke, or do something to, sort of cement his badassness as a Sith Lord, or if he's not a Sith Lord, leader of the First Order, whatever you want to call it. And I don't feel like they really did that. They've really missed an opportunity with Snoke. I love Kylo Ren. He's my favorite villain. But they're really putting all their eggs in one basket here. And same with Phasma. Phasma, same thing. I know nothing about her. They killed her off so quickly before she ever got to do anything. She is Boba Fett, basically. Maybe that's what they were going for. Boba Fett, cool costume, fan favorite, does nothing. That's kind of what Phasma is. And that sucks because Phasma is a really cool character, and I feel like there's a lot of potential for her. But I think that's maybe, another area they'll go in with canon materials through comics and whatever else. But that's another character where I just feel like something. I guess they didn't want her to take, not a leading role, but to take her a front and center role. And she just feels wasted. She feels very, very wasted. So I don't know about that. The second half I mentioned I liked a lot better, and that problem only was upped the second time around. Second half I loved both times. First half, not so much. First half is okay, but the second half is so good. I feel fairly confident with my rating. I gave it a 9, somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9 on my second viewing. I'm still in there just because the second half is so good that, you know, I can't ignore that. I'm not ignoring that the first half isn't the best. It's not terrible, but it's not that great either. But the second half is so great that, you know, you can't really ignore it. Another thing I want to mention, how this movie sort of approaches the Force is weird. So it's different, and they kind of saw that with The Force Awakens too. Like we saw Kylo Ren stop a blaster bolt in midair. That's something, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't seen before. So Disney is kind of trying to expand what they're doing with The Force. I like that, but they open up a huge can of worms here because Leia surviving in space and sort of floating her way back to the ship, that was really weird to me. And that was one of the things I was kind of hinting at. I said a few key scenes. That was one of them. I didn't like that scene at all. I felt like that was very off. It looked weird. It didn't make sense to me. Even if you can, you know, float with the Force, she was still out in space. I mean, now I guess in the prequels when General Grievous sort of busts the window open and Obi-Wan and Anakin are in there, but still, this seemed weird. It seemed like a weird scene to take, you know, and that's a whole other can of worms that they opened up. But and same with Luke projecting himself. Luke projecting himself across the galaxy, and then like as like a hologram. Never seen that before, obviously. That was kind of weird. I thought it was a nice. I actually didn't mind it, but I just want Disney to be careful here because they really are opening up a huge can of worms with Force powers, making it so vague, and how almost like anything is possible. They're expanding what can be a Force power, and I don't know. That's something that's really. I feel like it worked for this movie, but down the line, it's not consistent with whatever else we've seen, the other 6 movies we've seen so far with the Force. No other person's done anything like that, and that's just kind of, I don't know. It seemed a little weird to me. So, and they're expanding. Like I said, so I'll talk real quick. I talk about the expanding of the characters. So the end shot, they showed that little boy Force grabbing the broom. That's something that they're obviously trying to expand the Star Wars universe. And I don't know if that's Rian Johnson's way of saying, hey, this boy is going to be a part of my trilogy, this trilogy I'm going to do, or this boy is going to just serve as an example that there are other Force users out there, and we're expanding this universe, and the new trilogy is going to be something along those lines. Hard to say. But with the fact that it's the ending like that, I guess it's sort of like the Resistance has hope because they have people who are going to support them. Maybe that's what they're trying to say with it. I don't know. But there are some things about that ending shot that I didn't quite love. Just that, I don't know, it felt out of place to me. It felt like sort of, I don't know, I feel like the ship scene with Rey and Leia, that could have been the ending scene. Jump to Lightspeed, credits. That's it. I don't know what they're trying to set up with that kid, but I don't know. I guess they're trying to expand things. Either way, so I mentioned Snoke, mentioned Rey's parents. That felt a tad underwhelming. Just wanted I mean, it's a clear answer, but it's not the answer we were looking for and expecting. And they tried to be unpredictable. They did it. But I really wanted her to be Luke's daughter or Palpatine or Kenobi. I mean, Star Wars has always kind of been a family drama, soap opera kind of deal, right? And I guess Disney is trying to make it expand that. But that's kind of what it is. And I kind of feel like it would make more sense to continue that trend than to stray away from it. The big problem with Rey, a lot of people think she's a Mary Sue. Kind of, but that's kind of what Star Wars is, because Luke kind of is too. Luke got trained, but Luke and Anakin, Anakin was created by midichlorians, so he's a little bit different. He's like designed to be a prodigy, but he was kind of great at everything too. Great pilot, great fighter, very strong with the Force. Luke was too. Luke got trained. But one thing that they kind of went away from too, everyone expected Luke to not want to train Rey, but then he would. We all thought that would happen, right? But he doesn't really. He gives her like maybe 1 or 2 lessons, then he never trains her. And Rey is just going to go, I guess, and train herself because she has the books. I saw that she took the books herself. I'm guessing she's going to start a new Jedi Order and train herself, but she never got trained. And how is she going to defeat Kylo or whoever else? I guess she defeated him the first time, but he was injured. He got shot. So, but yeah, I was hoping she would get trained and learn something and grow, but she doesn't, because it's more about how Luke doesn't want to fight anymore and doesn't want to engage in this little battle here, and he just wants to kind of do his own thing and just die on the island, I guess. But he, Rey just never gets trained, and that was kind of weird to me. I thought she would she got maybe 1 or 2 lessons, but nothing too significant. Nothing where she would be a great fighter or be great in the Force after this. I don't know. The visuals as a whole look great. I thought this is one of the better shot Star Wars films, one of the better shot sci-fi films that I've seen in a while. That's something that I really, really enjoyed. I thought there's some beautiful, stunning shots in this film. Snoke looked great CGI-wise. The one thing I will say about Snoke in the very beginning, his first scene, not when he's on the hologram, but when he's in the throne room, the way he walks towards Kylo, that I could tell was a little weird, was a little off. The CGI, well, it's always tricky with that, because if you had a problem with Tarkin CGI in Rogue One, you probably had a problem with Snoke's in this one. Because it looks amazing. If everyone and all the surroundings looked like that, you would say it looked photorealistic. But when you put that CGI motion capture, motion capture character next to real people and real things, you can tell the difference. And that's what happens. When he starts walking towards Kylo, you can start to see his body move a little off and his face looks a little different. You could tell something, it doesn't look human, right? Well, he's not human to begin with, I don't think, but it doesn't look real. And that's something I noticed with Snoke. Otherwise, he looked great. CGI looked great other than that. The throne room fight scene. One of the best Star Wars scenes ever. One of the best battle scenes for sure, if not the best. That scene gave me goosebumps. I think I talked about that in my review. That scene gave me goosebumps. Second time I love that scene so much. It is so well choreographed and so well executed. The Imperial guards, or Snoke's guards, whatever they're called, those guys were awesome. That scene is just amazing from start to finish. Right when Kylo kills Snoke and this fight starts, you can tell, looks beautiful, completely well choreographed. One of the best, most emotional fight scenes ever filmed in Star Wars. That if we got another scene similar to that in the first half of the movie, I think it would have been a different story. Just hold us over with a couple more action scenes in the beginning. But the Last Jedi doesn't really do that. It kind of explores the characters a little bit more in the first half. Going into Poe's, sort of Poe's dilemma with his character development, those kind of things. I don't know, hard to say, but I think the throne room fight scene is amazing. So let's just talk about the characters and their development real quick. So I really like how these characters are developed in this movie. They're developed really, really well, I think, for the most part. Poe's I really liked especially because he is sort of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. And Leia tries to mature him, to get him to mature and sort of grow as a leader. Because obviously you can tell they're gearing up to have him take command of the Resistance and have Leia sort of quietly go away somewhere or maybe die off screen, something like that. I'm not sure how they're going to approach that, honestly, but I think Poe is gearing up to become the leader. I like how he matures in this movie. He grows. He wants to blow everything up. He wants to get in a ship and blow everything up because it's fun and what he thinks is most effective. But that's not always the best decision to make, and he learns that over the film. And I like that. Rey is sort of tempted with the dark side a little bit. It's not explored completely, but she's tempted a little bit to join Kylo. I wish that were explored a little bit more, give her more reason to join and then say no. Why does she want to be a Jedi so bad? Why does she believe in the light so much over the dark? That's not something that's really made clear. Her motivations are never made crystal clear. That's something I would like to see a little bit more, like I said, deeper explored. But generally, I feel like the characters were progressed pretty well. Kylo Ren, I said his motivations are a little less clear than they were in The Force Awakens. In The Force Awakens, I guess he is too in this one. He's very desperate to prove himself. He's very desperate to live up to his grandfather and Darth Vader's legacy, and he wants to prove that he's intimidating, he's strong, he's capable, and that he can be a badass, right? And that's why he wears the helmet most of the time. But in The Last Jedi, he destroys the helmet because he wants to let the past die, and he sort of moves on from that. He sort of goes in a different direction because he kind of thinks that's what Snoke wants him to do, and he wants to prove himself as being tough on the, without the helmet, without looking that all black and chrome helmet looking kind of dangerous. He wants to prove that he's dangerous on his own without the costume. And I like that. But I feel like his motivations are a little more clear. He's desperate to prove himself on The Force Awakens. In this one, he's just sort of desperate to prove himself to Snoke. And that's still there in the first one, but there's something about his character that just wasn't as good this time around. He's still my favorite character. He's still my favorite character in Star Wars, period, and in this movie and in The Force Awakens. But I feel like his villainous presence was a little lesser this time around. Because in the first one, he killed Lord Santeca right off the bat. He lets you know he's a badass, right? He's very capable. He force freezes Rey later in the movie. This time, he throws Hux around a couple times and he kills Snoke. But killing Snoke was just sort of a trick, right? It wasn't like a overt display of power or strength, and that's why I don't really give it. He gets credit for it, and he's still a strong villain. He's still a conflicted villain, but there's something about his character without the helmet too. Like he was a little more badass with the helmet, a little more intimidating and fearful, like Vader was. He struck more fear in his opponents that way. He still does a good job of that on his own in The Last Jedi, but his character is just a little bit lessened for me this time around. He's still great, but he's not quite as clearly motivated and clearly developed this time around. I like the fact that the Resistance are the underdogs. They're kind of the underdogs in The Force Awakens too, but at this time around, they're clear underdogs. They're on the run most of the movie, if not all the movie. They're not really on the offensive very, very much at all. And I like that. The Empire Strikes Back kind of felt the same way. The Resistance loses this time around. Just like in The Empire Strikes Back, the good guys lose. Happens this time too. The First Order wins this round. Even though Luke kind of, distracts them and wins the final battle, so to speak, the First Order wins this time. They are clearly ahead and have the advantage right now. So when they kind of set up the next movie, that's the cliffhanger. You want to see how the Resistance is going to respond to losing, to being the huge underdogs. And I like that part of it. The good guys are the underdogs. The bad guys are more intimidating that way. I like that approach. Movie's unpredictable. I mentioned that. Being unpredictable is a good thing, but it can tend to be, like I said, a little too unpredictable. Like killing Snoke, didn't like that decision, didn't feel like it fit. There's a couple other things probably here and there, but killing Snoke is one of the big ones for sure. The Leia thing with the flying, that was an unpredictable moment, but didn't like that very much. Finn at the end, I don't know. I felt like I love Finn as a character, but I feel like his death would have made the movie heighten the emotional experience so much more, right? It would have changed a lot of things. And it would have not actually set up the love triangle because Finn would be sacrificing himself, right? He would sacrifice himself. Maybe then Luke would show up and sort of disappear, and then Luke dies too. I feel like Finn getting saved by Rose last minute and then kissing him, that kiss felt really out of left field to me. Really awkward, really weird. Didn't like that very much. That was one of the few moments in the second half I didn't love. But like I said, I like Rose as a character, but that love connection, very forced, very forced. I don't feel the chemistry there. So that's kind of weird to me. But yeah, I like too how this movie wasn't afraid to kill people. I know that sounds bad, but there were a lot of people who died, a lot of people who sacrificed themselves, and that raised the stakes, right? People are dying in this story. A lot of people are dying, innocent people. Not just fighters, but mostly fighters, but innocent people who are just trying to live their lives, get killed, caught up in the crossfire, or fighting for the resistance, fighting for the good guys, so to speak. And they sort of blur the lines between good and bad because they're both buying weapons from arms traders, right? So that's kind of cool too. It blurs the dark and the light, and kind of like they want to go for that balance, like they're trying to go for this new thing. That's cool. I like that. I like that the movie wasn't afraid to go a little darker in some spots. Editing is pretty good. I think the editing can sometimes be a little off. Mostly when they're filming conversations, they'll have Poe talking to Laura Dern's character, or another conversation where you can kind of hear the audio from the character and you're seeing the expression of the other character, and you can kind of see their mouth isn't moving in sync with what you're hearing, and it's weird cuts that way. That I noticed that a couple times. So the editing is really good for the most part, besides a couple shots like that. Still really well edited. The acting is great. I think this might be the best acted Star Wars movie I've seen. Everyone is great. Mark Hamill really, really killed it. Carrie Fisher really killed it. They were both fantastic. Both really, really great. Mark Hamill especially. I feel like Mark Hamill showed more depth and more layers to Luke than he has probably ever. He showed more ability as an actor as Luke than I think I've seen from him. He's a fantastic actor, but in this movie, he really, really knocked it out of the park. I thought him and Kylo Ren, Adam Driver really, really nailed this role. And him and Mark Hamill were probably the two brightest spots to me in this movie. Before we wrap up, the one problem, like I said, The Force Awakens set up a lot of different questions, right? Unanswered questions that were promised to be answered in the next movies to come. And then they answer them in this movie, and they don't feel big. They don't feel rewarding. They don't feel fulfilling, right? So that's a problem to me. Because I feel like the whole movie is about those questions, those unanswered questions. And then when you get them, they either don't answer them, or they do answer them and they just don't feel, they don't feel fulfilling, right? I know I'm saying that a lot, but that's how I feel about it. I want to know who Snoke is, right? I don't want a comic or some side story to tell me. I want the movie to tell me, right? Or at least hint at it, right? I don't know who Snoke is. Snoke died before I ever got to know who he was. I want to know who Rey's parents are. I want to know why they sold her on Jakku for parts or whatever, but still, I want to know who they are, right? And they just never go into that. Maybe a Force flashback or something could have been nice, but the answers, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi are inconsistent. And that's why I'm kind of excited that J.J. Abrams is coming back. Not only because I love The Force Awakens, but because it will be consistent with what he did, I believe, in Episode 7. And the characters will develop similarly to how they develop in 7. 7 is a much more even, more cohesive movie. The plot is great to me all throughout. The pacing is better. It takes place over a longer journey, a longer period of time. This movie, The Last Jedi, takes place over, it seems like a day or two. It's just basically one long chase scene that extends to a couple different places. I didn't like that as much. The Force Awakens felt more like a journey, and I liked it for that. But yeah, it's still a great movie, but still, there's a couple of things. So I talked about the ending shot. That shot felt a little bit forced to me, just because I feel like Rian Johnson is trying to set up his own trilogy. But I don't know. I think the ending ship with the lightspeed thing, with Leia and Rey and the rest of Resistance flying off could have been great. Live to fight another day kind of deal. They're trying to set up something with that, or trying to hint at something with that. It just remains to be seen what. So we'll see. I didn't love that. But as for Rian Johnson's trilogy, as we wrap things up, do I want Rian Johnson to direct a whole trilogy? I'm not opposed to it. I think he could do a really good job. I think he probably will learn something from this, because you've probably seen the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes are fantastic from the critics for The Last Jedi, but the fans seem to hate this movie for some reason. For one, they said it doesn't feel like Star Wars, too unpredictable. There's some issues like I mentioned with the characters and the story in general, the pacing. But yeah, a lot of fans seem to hate this movie. So it's really very divisive, but all Star Wars movies are divisive. Let's be real. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. You guys know me by now. I'm a pretty huge Star Wars fan. But let's be real about this. Star Wars fans are notoriously difficult to please. You cannot, no matter what audience, you cannot please everyone, right? But Star Wars fans are very, very difficult to please. I'm kind of included in that boat. I kind of include myself in there as well. But we are a very difficult bunch to please. We want a lot of different things at once, and we wanted to recapture that 1970s Star Wars glory, right? 1980, 1970s Star Wars original trilogy glory, right? But we also wanted to be different and new and unexpected. So that's really tough. That's something that's really tough to pull off. And many Star Wars fans are not going to be, I guess, satisfied with almost anything you do, right? Let's be real about that. They're not. So a lot of Marvel fans aren't going to be satisfied with anything you do. A lot of diehard comic readers aren't. That just kind of goes with the territory. So Disney, I think, is doing a really good job. But as for Rian Johnson, I think I'm a huge proponent of this. I think he should do Old Republic. The Old Republic is so rich with so many stories and so much going on and so many legends and myths that they haven't ever touched on, right? There's so much backstory that's unexplored that could be amazing, right? I think a movie about Revan, or Revan is the villain, Darth Revan, would be perfect. He is such a layered character that he would be the perfect villain for a Star Wars movie. Perfect. He would be amazing. He's like a mixture kind of Kylo and Darth Vader, right? Revan's one of my favorite characters. And I think an Old Republic trilogy with Rian Johnson would be great. They're not going to do it. I can almost guarantee you they're not going to do it. They don't really want to go into it, it seems. At the very least, do a TV show, Netflix or HBO or something, really, that would be great. But they're going to do something where they expand Star Wars in modern time with the saga that they're on now with new characters. That's what they're going to do. It's not going to be Resistance versus First Order. It's going to be something different. Maybe with that kid or other new characters, other Force-sensitive people. That's what they're going for. They saw with Rogue One that Star Wars can be successful without the Skywalkers necessarily. Well, Vader's in it, but not much. They saw that it could be successful without them, and I think they learned from that. And that's why they're going to do something new with this new trilogy. And I hope Rian Johnson does a good job. I think he can. I think he probably learned something from this movie. But Old Republic would be really great. Revan would be great. And that's something I think would please a lot of diehard Star Wars fans. If you don't know anything about Revan, I would look him up and do some Old Republic research because there's so much material there, so many characters, not just Revan, but so many other ones that are so great that would really be great for a lot of diehard Star Wars fans, or really anyone who could learn something new about older characters, older history in Star Wars. So I think that sums up pretty much everything. So I spoiled pretty much the whole movie, but that's what a spoiler review is for. So let me know if you actually enjoyed this style of spoiler review where I just kind of talk. And I have some notes here, obviously, like you saw, where I just kind of talk and sort of, I guess, ramble in some ways. I don't have really anything keeping me on track. But yeah, let me know if you enjoy this. I want to start a podcast up, actually, where I bring guests on and we discuss these kind of things. Discuss it maybe over a live stream where you guys can watch it live. Called the WillFoxification Podcast. I'm trying to set that up. We can discuss movie news and new movies, those new releases, those kind of things. Go more in depth than my reviews go into because, like I said, with the reviews, I can only go so in depth. I can't spoil stuff for you. I can't spoil anything for you. I can only hint at certain things. Spoiler review, I can go pretty in depth. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I'll post my list of favorite Star Wars movies. There's 10 of them now that I know of, at least 10, I think, including the main release ones. 10, and I'll post that list in the comment section below. But like I said, The Force Awakens is my favorite. Last Jedi is top 5, top 6. Still really enjoyed it. Second time around, enjoyed the second half more, enjoyed the first half less. So just sort of cemented my opinions even further than where they are now. So like I said, give me some feedback. Let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think about The Last Jedi. Let me know whether you're going to see it again, what you thought of it. Are you disappointed? Are you satisfied? Let me know what you thought, because I'd love to discuss it with you guys. Discussing in the comments is always fun, especially for a Star Wars movie. But you guys always have some great insights, so I'm excited about that. But, that's all for now then. This is WillFoxification signing off. Thank you, and I'll see you guys soon.